Welcome to a new series where I show you how I transformed this ordinary footage of a street in Berlin, Germany into a futuristic cyberpunk scene. We'll walk through the entire process step by step, from analyzing the original plate and generating the sci-fi environment using ComfyUI to compositing and delivery to final color grading. As with all of my projects, the goal is to demonstrate how we can use AI in professional cinematic pipelines to achieve industry standard quality, all while maintaining total data privacy by running the entire pipeline locally on my own machine. Let's jump right into it.
No data centers have been used in the making of this video.
Alright, so back in ComfyUI, I just opened workflow that I got from the YouTuber Mick Mumpitz. I actually subscribed to his Patreon to get the full workflows. The video I got it from, I believe it's called I Build a Free VFX Pipeline with Local AI 2023 Masterclass. So I'm going to use this workflow for him, and maybe I'm going to test another workflow for him later in the video. The way to go about it is to take the first frame from our shot and to stylize it to make it like the first frame of the final shot that we want to have, the sci-fi, to get motion data from the original footage and to use the motion data to animate the first frame so it will match the original footage. So later we could use the actress overlaid on top of this. So as you can see here in the workflow, I already loaded the first frame, and here I wrote a prompt, and let's just run it once and see what we get. Okay, so let's have a look at that. Okay, I'm not exactly sure I like it. It looks very plasticky. I don't care so much about the actress right now because I know that I'm going to replace her later with the real footage. The drones are cute, but maybe... yeah. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to run it a few more times. Let's say I will give it like 20 runs, and then let's see if there is something in this batch that is interesting for us. So as you can see here, I put 20 and make it run.
A few moments later.
Okay, we are back. It's finished. A few things if you're following along. I increased the steps to 35, and also I changed the seeds into increment and not to fixed. I changed the prompt just a little bit, and I don't know if it's a bug or not, but I encounter an issue that the set nodes and the get nodes that are behind here, that used to be connected here, but it didn't work for some reason, so I just connected everything manually. Look at the final result image. The resolution is 1392 over 752, which is not the same aspect ratio like 4K or HD. If you go inside this node here, you can see it's an entire node graph, and there is this node here that kind of changes the resolution, so the image will be suitable for the model. So the model will give better results. I tried to change this into an HD resolution, 1280 by 720, but it didn't give me good results. So I had to keep with this resolution here. So this is what we are going to work with right now. So it finished all the 20 runs, and let's go through them and let's just see if there is one that we really like. Okay, that's actually quite nice. I like this one. No. No. Actually, it's really hard to choose. I think, give me a second. I will find the one I like most.
One eternity later.
Alright, so I chose two. This one and that one. My reasoning is that I really care about the sign here. I like that there are not too many drones and there are trains on this side and something moving here. So I'm very curious to see how the AI is going to do this motion. I really like the smoke here and the overall atmosphere. The smoke here is a little bit strange because it's coming out of nowhere. The next image, it's much greener. The smoke is not as weird as the other one. There are little drones, and also the train here above. I really like this motion blur, so I'm very curious to see about this one. Yeah, right now I don't want to choose between them. Let's just run with both. And one last thing is that if you zoom in and you start looking at the text, you know, like here, for example, or here, or over here, all those signs, the text is really bad. It looks like an AI text. I could do another step now, which is taking those images to an image editing software like Photoshop or Photopea or Affinity and to tweak it a little bit. Because this first frame is what the final result is going to build on. So actually we want the first one to be very, very good. But a bigger issue that we have right now is with the aspect ratio. So let's try to fix it now. Alright, so I decided to use Photopea. Let's just try to align the images. Okay, you see this is lining up perfectly right now, but we are missing the top and the bottom. Alright, so we are finally there. We are finally start to construct the sci-fi universe. But wait, before we start, let's do some more preparation. So this workflow is also from Mumpitz. It's a very useful workflow. I'm sure that I'm going to use it for other workflows in the future. And what it does, it's like I give it the clean plate shots that we did before, the very rough clean plate. And what it gives me, it's a depth map, canny, pose information, camera tracker, and the mask. For our use today, the camera tracker, as you can see, fails miserably. It's tracking the character much more than the surrounding. I don't know what's happening there, so unusable. Pose information is great. It's actually doing a good job. It's very flickery. You see, it detects some people that I haven't cleaned in the background. So let's don't use that. And also we are going to have the character there. So we actually don't need it. We're going to use the real character. We are not going to replace the character. Canny information looks kind of messy, but maybe also promising because it has more information about camera tracking than the camera tracker. But look at the depth map. The depth map really gives us everything that we need right now, in my opinion. And here you can see why we did all this like rough cleanup before. Because if we are going to use this information now, as you can see, like all those like ghostly things that we had in the clean plate, they don't show anymore. But we do have a very good motion data of the camera, of the change of focus, of the characters coming forward, and we can really start building on top of that. So another really nice thing about this workflow is over here on top, you can start merging things together. So I'm merging the depth with the mask and the input video to produce this video, which is the depth map and the character overlaid on top of that from the original footage. So the way I like to think about it, it's like we are taking the footage, we keep what we really, really want, which is the character, and the rest of the world around her, we simplified and we reduce into an information which is based on motion and shape, and it's something that the AI could start shaping and transforming and changing. We are also going to use the mask. And when I look at the mask, of course, it's really rough, garbage matte, but it's very useful. I'm sure that I'm also going to use it later in Nuke when we are going to start doing some cleanups, but this is for later. Now, the fun part. Let's start constructing the sci-fi universe. Here, the next workflow is also from the YouTuber Mumpitz. So we are going to output a 720p video at 16:9. Well, the aspect ratio is what we need, but as you can see, it's only like really low resolution. And we need to give it a first image and the control video that we just generated from the other workflow and the mask because we want to keep the character. One more thing about this workflow is that it provides here with the LoRa loader with the Lenovo LoRa. I know a lot of people use it because it's supposed to give you a more realistic result. from my experience, Lenovo gives a realistic result if what you want to get is an Instagram photo that is taken with the phone. So it starts introducing a lot of artifacts and it crashes the dynamic range, and it gives you a picture that is similar to what you could get from your phone, you know, not from the Alexa Mini. I want professional camera footage, so I disabled that. Also in this workflow, you can use more than just one reference image. So this one is reference and first frame, and you can plug in more pictures. I tried just to duplicate the one that we already have, but I found that it doesn't really change much. I think it would be very helpful, and I need to test it, so don't take my word, but I think it could be very helpful if we don't have only one shot, if we have a sequence, if we have a scene and we need to keep some kind of continuity in between the shots. So for example, if we have this first shot and the next one is to cut to her close-up maybe, or to the over the shoulder, then maybe I will start introducing the other frames here that are extracted from this shot before. That's an interesting idea. This is something that I would be very happy to try to experiment with in future videos. I want to highlight one thing that I did here in the workflow that I found work for me very well. So if you look at the note here, we can see that the creator recommended us to use 4n+1 formula. Well, we don't have the privilege to do that in real production, because in real production we get shots whatever, you know. In our case, we have 333 frames to work with. 333 does not divide it by 4n+1. So we need to start doing some kind of looping mechanism to make one set of frames and another set of frames and to merge them together, dissolve or morph. I don't know how would you call that in the AI workflow. You would be tempted to do sets of 81 frames or even higher than that. So what I found is breaking when I do that is that when I do large chunk of frames, one after the other, the dissolve part, the morphing part is much more obvious than if I do really short ones, one after the other. So I decided to go with 41 frames for each set and 13 sets altogether. They call it iteration here. So it's like 41, 41, 41, 41, 41, 13 times. And the dissolve part between them, it's 14 frames. So you can imagine that a large part of the iteration itself is just the dissolve morph in between the frames. And I found that if you do this a lot of times, you get a much more coherent overall output. The issue is when you have like a large chunk and then another large chunk, is that they kind of use a different seed, or they look a little bit different, they will have something different in them, and then the morph dissolve in between them is going to be very, very obvious, because your brain kind of get used into something and then all of a sudden it changes. But if you do a lot of change right after the other, it kind of works much, much better. And also here in the workflow, you can give like a different prompt to other chunks. What I did here, just like one prompt to the first chunk, and then to the second chunk, I removed a few elements because I saw that when it repeats it later, actually I get a worse result, and then I just copy paste it to all the other chunks. Here in this workflow, the prompt is actually very, very sensitive. So you do need to mention everything that is moving in the shot. For example, here, so if that's the first frame and I haven't said like an elevated highway with speedy traffic with motion blur, it would not move this, it would stay still. And I tried it a few times. And also, for example, the drones here. If I wouldn't say in the prompt that the drones are police drones and they are moving in circles and they are scanning the street, the AI would kind of stick them in place and ignore them a little bit. Same with the smoke and other elements in the background. Now let's focus on the drones for a second, because as you can see, this is a really bad Photoshop that I did, because what I found is that the first frame that we generated in the previous workflow kind of work, but kind of didn't work. Let me show you what I mean. Okay, so we have this first frame that we generated before, and as you can see, there are like drones here in the background, and the result I got is this one. Okay, so the issue that I have here is that some of the drones look okay. I kind of like the big one in the foreground that are moving. This one here goes behind the pole and then again behind the pole, where I think it's actually supposed to be in front of the second pole, like in between both of them. And look at the one here on the very left corner. If I go a little bit back, it goes behind the sign, which is of course a mistake. It shouldn't do that. My biggest issue here is actually the drones here in the background, because they're kind of connecting to each other with lights, and this is built on top of this image of the first frame, because here they kind of attach themselves like a cobweb in the sky or something like that. So the AI is getting a little bit confused or something, and it doesn't know what to do with it. And also, look at here. The stationary drone here in the sky is all of a sudden changed, and there is another drone popping out to existence. It doesn't look good. Now, you can start working with it back in compositing to do a sky replacement, to start cleaning up the drones and to put them like in between the poles and start masking and stuff like that. But you know, I was thinking, okay, I could do that. It's actually not such a difficult work to do. But let's try something else. Let's go back to Photopea and let's like remove the drones from the sky and just make my own drones, because I'm not sure that the shape of the drone that the AI came up with, it's something that I'm happy with. It looks like weird, you know, it doesn't look like a real drone. So here is like just a photo of a drone that I quickly cut, and I changed the color so it will look like a police drone, like she's under surveillance. Maybe one of the drones is like following her. Okay, so this is what I used for the first frame, and let's look at the result. All right, so I'm quite happy with that. There are a few issues still. As you can see, when she approaches the camera, the background is getting out of focus, and I'm not sure I really like the effect of the bokeh here and the out of focus. It looks like there are scan lines, almost like it's an interlaced footage. I don't know why it does that. A bigger issue that I have is that the sky is getting darker. So this is where we start, and if we go forward, as you look at the sky here, and the sky are getting darker and darker, like there are like dark clouds coming. What I think is happening is that like it's doing this like focus shift, and it introduces some bokeh artifacts, which are like the edges of the bokeh that are sometimes darker, or some interference pattern of the light inside the lens, you know, that you get those like dark and bright lines. Yeah, if we look again here, it's almost like there are like electricity wires here on the sky, and they are making this like dark bokeh effect. Now, keep in mind also that I did a full screen here on a 720p footage before upscaling it. So we are still working on a low resolution. We still have a lot of issues with the drone looking very much like an AI. The traffic lights here in the background need some work. The sign here need to be replaced. And also the sign here, look, this is total mess. Like we need to replace that also. But all of those things are relatively easy to do in compositing, right? Like it's just a matter of tracking, replacing, blurring. So this is something we can start working with, in my opinion. Overall, I like what I see. I like the style. But because of the dark skies, I tried to do something else. And let me show you this next. Okay, so here in ComfyUI, if we look again at the control video, and focus on the background here, you see as she moving towards the camera and the camera is pulling focus, the background is getting darker and darker and darker because it's further away or the focus changes. So what I'm thinking may happen is that the AI thinks that the skies are getting darker. And maybe this is why we get this result of the sky getting darker. So what I try to do, I try to make another control video, but with the canny information. So here is the control video, but now instead of the depth map, I use the canny. And as you can see, it's, I don't know, it's not looking very good, right? But I said, okay, for educational purposes, and I have my own assumption how AI think and create things, let's try it. Let's see what's happening here. And this is the result. Okay, so in my opinion, this is even worse than what we had before. The sky still changes into a darker sky. So I think my first theory is that it's just introducing bokeh elements and some out of focus elements is a better theory than just the depth map is getting darker. The drone is not great, the camera movement is not great, because the canny information is actually worse than the depth map in regards to camera information. Things just break apart more in this shot, and I wouldn't want to start fixing every little thing here. Like the highway is weird, it's going outside of the building, and now it's in front of the building. The drone is getting outside of the building, but now it's in front of the building. The shape of the traffic light is changing. Anyway, I don't want to work with it, it's too messy. I also really don't like the smoke here. So let's stick with the first one that we got. Okay, so this is the one that we are going to work with in the next step. But just for fun, I tried to generate another video with a different start frame. So let's look at this one. You can see more drones, more traffic behind her. But even here, you see the darkies are becoming darker and darker. And the camera breaks a little bit at the end. But this is just for fun. I still like the first one better. Okay, so before we jump back into Nuke and fix the shot, I want to show you a mistake that I did, and this is also a very good lesson learned for both of us. So as you can see, this shot here that we got from ComfyUI and the original shot behind it. So the original shot is 333 frames, but the ComfyUI output is only 330 frames. So we lost here 1, 2, 3 frames. So I was looking also at the log that ComfyUI has on its terminal, and at the end it gave me an error. So what happened is that when we divided the shot into chunks, the last chunk didn't have all the 41 frames that we asked for. It only had the 3, and then it broke. And so ComfyUI didn't have the rest of the frames to work with because it needs all the frame. It cannot work only with a shorter amount of frames when you specify. And it's a very good lesson learned for both of us, because I think that moving forward, working in production and with other artists, it's very important that if we do those round trips between Nuke, ComfyUI, DaVinci Resolve, or other Analyze and other softwares, when we jump into ComfyUI, it's really important to have handles, like a tail and a head, a few frames, just for safety. I think if I had at least like 41 frames here extra and 41 frames there extra, I would have been like completely safe. And another thing that it would fix is that a lot of models I found mess up the first 1 or 2 frames. And when you have those kind of chunk separations like we did, the first chunk is kind of like a test run. It's not really a test run, but it looks like it sometimes, because it's like, okay, it's not really there, or the camera movement is not really there, or some objects are not moving. But the second chunk, things start falling into place and they start moving as you intend, and the result is much better. So going forward, working with those type of workflows, I would always have at least 41 or 81 frames as a buffer at the start, and also a few at the end. For this showcase video, I will not going to fix it. I will not going to export everything, go back to ComfyUI and render everything from the beginning. Let's just say the shot is now 330 frames. It's not a real production. I'm not going to deliver it to anybody else. So, okay, I learned my mistake. It will not happen again.